Hello, lovely beings. I'm JJ Rose. I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about the importance of doing foundational work on oneself, the initiation process, and the ego. And I'm going to flit in between all three of these in order to get the overall point and concept across. Part of foundational work, some will call it work on the basic self, and or just getting in touch with who you are. This all has to do with understanding the core root of you. Think first chakra, right? Very first, second, even third to a point chakras, in which you're getting to understand your physical body, you're getting to understand your core emotions, your basic feelings. And as we all know, there's going to be a lot of shadow work that's going to need to be done on these parts of yourself. But until you fully have a fundamental understanding of yourself and take ownership thereof, you're not really able to do shadow work effectively because you're just scratching the surface instead of going in extremely deep. Now, once you've mastered this basic self, as we'll call it, because that seems to be the running term right now, once you've mastered that, once you fully understand how you feel about things, what your knee jerk reactions are, how your processes of thinking and taking in information and reacting to situations, and you really, really have taken a personal, honest view of those items, then you can proceed on the rest of your journey. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because those of you who've listened to me for a while, you've probably heard me say before that I don't pay attention to everything that's thrown my way, typically, unless it's either huge or it happens over 3 times. And I've had about 8 of these situations recently that have been thrown my way, kind of almost all at the same time. And they all have to do with a particular sentence. And I want to thank my good friend Chucky Danger for this sentence. Unearned knowledge without true understanding is dangerous. You can read all the books in the world. You can have listened to all the lectures and podcasts and things that people have put out on all sorts of spiritual journeys and all the things, right? But if you have not addressed the core part of yourself and you are not being brutally honest with yourself about how it is that you function, what motivates you, what drives you, and if that's a positive or a negative, right? As well as dissecting yourself so completely that you understand yourself fully, as in what makes you tick. If you don't understand yourself, all of this knowledge that you're gaining from listening to things and reading things, it all becomes extremely dangerous. And here's the reason why. Because you have all of this knowledge, but you don't fully comprehend what makes you tick, and you haven't addressed that core part of yourself and those basic feelings, you're not being honest with yourself, right? What ends up happening is your ego ends up taking over and takes the wheel. And this becomes dangerous because this is how we get cult leaders. This is how we get people who are living under submission of another person, whether it be someone who is a religious or spiritual figure or, a belief system. Your carnal desires are going to be leading and manipulating others to serve what is not healed within yourself. And that's really, really scary. And again, I come back to This is where we get some of these cult leaders who are doing really inappropriate things with people in their groups. Or we get people who are having people do really dangerous stuff with their lives, and they're not allowing them to think for themselves. It's very, you think within this small little box that I'm presenting to you, it's my way or the highway. That is control, right? And control is what the ego thrives on. The ego wants to control everything. It wants to control yourself, other people, the world around it. And the truth of the matter is that you're not in control. You can control how you react to things, but then there's a point if you haven't done the core work that you can control, let's say, your reactions. But are you really controlling it? Or are you stuffing it? Or are you putting it in a box and you're going to end up like a pressure cooker blowing up later as a result? And so this is where we get into, if you haven't dealt with the core stock of yourself and have a true and honest fundamental conversation with yourself about what drives you, what needs are being met and how, and what needs aren't being met and why you need those needs met, right? Is there a constructive way? So there are people who have very strong energy levels. We'll just put it like that. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Very strong carnal energy levels. They need that fulfilled. Well, as we all know, that can lead into a whole laundry list of issues in life, right? There are addictions and there are, playing games and manipulating other people because it serves that carnal desire and need within oneself. There are things that people can look at on the internet obsessively, and then they're not meeting their families' needs and requirements because they're too busy taking care of that one base carnal desire. And instead of going inside and figuring out, okay, why do I have that desire? Why is it so great? And what can I potentially channel that energy into that would be more positive? So we all know that there's a lot of politicians and people in power, CEOs of major companies, that tend to have bigger drives, shall we say. And if you really look, a lot of what they're doing is they're channeling that energy from that carnal desire and they're putting that energy towards something positive, which is leading a company or being extremely successful in their work or whatever it may be, right? Some people put it into their artwork and it's super successful. There are positive ways that you can funnel that energy. But the issue is that if you're not being true to yourself and you're not being honest with yourself as to what that base need is and why. For some people, it literally is just a physical thing, but it links up with a mental tick, right? And so if we're not honest about what is it that I'm either lacking, and most of the time it ends up being a self-esteem issue, but there are people who have learned to dupe themselves because they don't want to go inside, they don't want to do the hard work, and therefore they end up weaponizing that energy. And this is where we get people who are going out on their significant other that they were supposed to be monogamous to, or they are extremely, let's say, flirty with other people in order to get that affection and attention that they quote unquote think they need or want. But in reality, it's just a desire to control another person. They think that they need that energy, that attention from other people, but it really comes down to an internal self-esteem issue that is lacking. They don't feel blank enough, right? And there's many different ways that you can interpret that. So, if someone starts manipulating others to serve what isn't healed within themselves, and they're just letting their ego run rampant, they're not checking themselves, they become a bottomless pit of want and desire. And that goes into the instant gratification, right? And this is rampant in our society. I've brought this up many, many times, but in our current society, people are very used to instant gratification. I want it all and I want it now. And what I have run into several times is people get into spirituality and immediately there's this, well, why am I not learning this, or why am I not able to do this, like 2 days into my spiritual journey? Well, it has taken most other people years upon years to get to that point, and you want to learn it all in 2 days. And what if you're never going to learn it? Or what if you're not making any strides? And especially if you keep trying and trying and trying and nothing's happening, that's usually spirit's way of having a stopgap there to protect not only you, but everyone else from the damage you could potentially inflict. Because if you are leading with that ego and that bottomless pit of desire and want, and I want it now, instant gratification, give me, gimme, gimme, control, 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 what are you going to do then if you suddenly had major gifts? You could potentially use those gifts against other people, therefore inflicting harm, damage to other folks. And so what ends up happening is if you want to do good, then spirit will naturally put you in a position where you're not able to grow those specific gifts so that you're not causing harm, carnage, and damage. So let's talk about ego for a second, okay? Because we all have them. I hear this term ego death, and I've heard a ton of different answers as to what exactly it is. And I understand that there is a point that many people will get to where it almost feels like the ego dies. So I've got news for you. The ego never dies, it's always there. It serves a function. It is a self-protection module. It also is that, okay, I've achieved this, and therefore, what's my next goal, right? So it helps you along so that you're motivated. But letting it control you and letting it run rampant and wild, completely unchecked, that's when we run into an issue. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get your ego under control and you're never going to have an issue with it. Everyone does, including myself, right? So it's figuring out and really watching when those reactions or when these urges to control someone or a situation come up, and looking deeper and figuring out, okay, why is this coming up for me? And I know this isn't right. So, why is this coming up? And then looking at yourself in totality and figuring out, is this a symptom of a larger issue? Or is this a situation where I'm perhaps ignoring something that is a major issue because I want to, quote unquote, seem healed, enlightened, whatever pleasant word you want to put in there? So, listening to the ego and just going with it versus overriding it and having control of it. So when you are able to override the ego and say, okay, I know you want to be successful, but we are not going to be successful and happy if we're gaining success on the backs of other people, or whatever other example that might be, right? Like doing something shady or doing something that's not quite correct and right, because that's when we have to balance our ego's desire and want with our morals. And then we have to do this delicate dance between the two to figure out, okay, is this desire in line with my moral compass? And is there a way that I can achieve what the ego desires by adhering to my morals and values? And that is where the true self control comes in. Lack of patience due to the ego comes from a sense of entitlement. Okay? The truth of the matter is that no one is coming to save you. Absolutely no one. You are there to save yourself. There are people who will come into your life and they will help you, they will assist you, they will be guiding lights, they will be teachers in various different ways. But they are not coming to save you. They are sent by spirit to help you save yourself. So if you find yourself constantly impatient with your growth rate, with your learning rate, with whatever it is in your life, right? Especially in for this video specifically, I'm talking about your spiritual journey. If you're impatient because you feel like you're not gaining gifts fast enough, or you're not learning quick enough, or you're not levitating off of a silver pillow quick enough, that's when you need to do work on the foundation. You need to get in touch with your body, with those basic feelings and emotions, figure yourself out first, then start doing the shadow work, get a fundamental understanding of yourself and an ownership of yourself, the ego, and establish clear moral boundaries as well as clear morals. What is okay? What is not okay? And once you have all of those in place, the rest of the growth starts and you will just take off like a rocket, right? Spirit's just going to lead you on the next step of your path and off you go. But if you keep finding yourself in this circle where you take 3 steps forward, then you hit a brick wall, you fall down, and you're back at stage 1. And then you keep doing it over and over and over again. That is Spirit's way of kind of keeping you in a little box so that you will do the core foundational work that is necessary. Now, a lot of people bring up the word initiation. And it is true. In order to progress through your spiritual journey, there is an initiation process that comes from spirit. This is with other people. This is through your spirit guides, through your spirit team, through your higher selves. All of these entities are in place and around you, constantly watching, monitoring in order to help you progress along. And they're going to get very, very loud if you're not listening to step 1 that they've repeated 95 times. And part of why I'm bringing this up as well is because there's a lot of people who hear about various gifts or various knowledge and understanding, and they want it. They want it all, and they want it now. And yet they refuse to do the work that needs to be done in order to get there. So then they sit there in jealousy, in judgment. Sometimes they get spiteful and hateful about other people. And then they think people are gatekeeping, right? Because then the paranoia creeps up. Oh, well, these people must be gatekeeping this information from us. And, this is why the elites don't want to allow us to grow, and they're gatekeeping all this information. Okay, stop. Stop with all of that. Okay? There's many elites who haven't done any of the work, and trust me, they're not working with a whole heck of a lot other than very base and carnal desires, and probably in a facet of life that wouldn't align with your moral compass if you were to really come down to it. The other reason I bring this up is there's a lot of people talking about using chemicals and specific herbs and things of that nature, if you catch my drift, in order to have a drug induced vision quest, right? In order to speed up this process. Drug use to speed up this process leads to depression, anxiety, and in some cases, worse, absolute psychosis. And the reason why is because you can have these intense experiences, right? And when you sober up, when the herb or drug is no longer there, your serotonin levels crash, And because you haven't done the core work, that high, that beautiful feeling that you were able to tap into of wherever it is that you went is gone because the base foundational work has not been done in order to gently ride that wave and keep you structured and whole through that entire process so that you can hang on to that wonderful, wonderful feeling. Now, I'm not saying once you've done the foundational work, go out and, drug assist on having a vision quest. I personally don't agree with doing that at all because your body naturally makes those chemicals in order for you to do this naturally. It can be done with fasting, sleeping, it can be done with just meditation, pure relaxation, and getting your physical body under control. And that comes with keeping your stress down, keeping a healthy diet, keeping your vitamins up, keeping everything in balance, getting your life to a point where it's fully functional and you're living to a point where you're able to take those next steps of your journey without it completely flipping your life upside down, right? That's how you will be able to progress forward with your work and in your journey without having these giant crashes, these ups and downs, ups and downs. And it almost mimics someone with bipolar disorder. You have these manic highs with these wonderful experiences or dreams or whatever they are, right? And then you have these crashes that if you're not honest with yourself, you're going to say, oh, okay, well, I'm in an intense period of ego death and shadow work. Well, no, your chemicals in your brain are all completely messed up because you used a foreign substance in order to obtain a state of being that your body and mind would have produced naturally for you had you taken the time to do the core foundational work that is needed. Having control over yourself does not always mean that you've completely healed. It can mean that you're denying your emotions. It can mean that you're stuffing your emotions. It can mean that you're just living life completely blind to your own actions and way of being. And this ends up promulgating through your relationships with other people. You're not going to want to be around other people. Or when you're around other people, they're not going to want to be around you because you come in with some low vibe and stanky energy and they don't want to be around that. They don't vibe with you. They're not on the same vibrational frequency. And therefore, you're going to come in and you're going to ruffle feathers and you're going to keep having interaction after interaction after interaction that goes south or negative, or you're constantly having to clean up afterwards, and you're going to feel bad. And Lord knows how many other people that you're encountering that you've made them feel bad or awkward. So, again, just by understanding and learning about yourself first, that's how you start this process. And I know I've talked about this before, in the fact that I am absolutely shocked by how many people who can say all the spiritual things and they've had visions and they've done amazing things with their gifts and they are so completely unhealed. And then they end up weaponizing their gifts in order to manipulate and control other people. I did an entire video about it, about spiritual responsibility. And if that is not ringing a bell, I highly recommend that after listening to this, you go listen to that because this is something I've been trying to get across. And I feel like I have to put a video like this out that is very blunt and to the point of how important it is to do this work so that people really understand. I'm not a gatekeeper. I don't ever want to be mean or ice people out. But if someone keeps coming to me over and over and over again, complaining that they're not making progress or they're not doing this or they're not doing that, and they want to do X, Y, and Z, but yet they're absolutely refusing to do the core work on themselves in order to be productive or helpful to anybody else, then that's a waste of my time. I'm not going to sit there and say the same thing to you 500 times. At a time, I will have to ice you out or just stop replying because you already know the answer. I already know the answer that I'm going to give you. If you ignore your self image and you don't understand yourself, you will not understand what tools and resources you already have. And this is vitally important because most of you out there are walking around with tons of tools and resources already in your belt that are not only going to make your life easier, but that are going to help other people as well. And whether that's on a bigger stage or just a one on one stage with people you meet in day to day life. But again, if you're not doing that core work of understanding yourself, of self discovery, then you're sitting there potentially on a treasure chest that you've never cracked because you refuse to look down and see what it is that you're sitting on. You've been sitting on everything you need the entire time, but you keep looking up in the sky because you want to be up there, you want to vibrate higher, you want to do this, you want to be happy, I want to have this, you know, euphoric life. I hate to break it to you, loves, but being spiritual doesn't mean that every day is roses and rainbows. Yes, you're able to get through the hard times a heck of a lot easier than unhealed people or people who haven't done that work. But it doesn't mean that you don't still have moments. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get angry again. I mean, I get angry all the time. And when I get angry, I have my moment where I let the anger bubble up because there's no sense in stuffing emotions. We're humans, we have emotions. If you're stuffing your emotions, again, you're becoming a pressure cooker. That's going to be very dangerous. So you let the emotion come up and then you analyze it. Why is this making me so angry? Is there something within myself that I need to work on? Or is this a bigger issue? Am I attracting people with this specific issue to me? And why is that? Right? Is it because it's spirit blaring that you need to work on this for yourself? Or is it maybe letting you know, hey, there's someone in your life that hasn't done the work that you're letting control you as a result of them being unhealed? And that's also a huge possibility. There are so many of us with big, beautiful, loving, compassionate, empathetic hearts. And we let some people absolutely rake us over the coals and run us around, and we don't even realize it because we love and we don't think that people would be doing things to us in a negative way. And so, therefore, we let them get away with so much until there's a tipping point where all of a sudden we realize, and I've had many of these, like far too many. Last year, I had like five. And these were people who were very, very integral in my life. And something silly, to be honest, would happen. And it was like I cut and I cut hard. And I would take a moment and I'd sit with how I felt and I would analyze, and then I would go back through the entire relationship. And in almost every single instance, I realized I let them have so much control over me because I thought this was a reciprocal relationship. I thought I was getting back what I was putting in to some extent, right? Because we don't always get back exactly what we put in, but in some capacity. But in reality, all I was getting was someone who wanted to control me or use me for whatever their intentions were, and they were never giving back. And again, that's an unhealthy relationship, right? And so in those instances, I decided to make the cut. And do I still miss the people? Of course. But I realized they're unhealed. And I spent years upon years upon years giving them the resources and the information and hours of my time listening, right? Giving the advice and all the things. And they kept going back and doing the same thing. All they wanted was the attention. And I'm giving these examples because how many times have you bent somebody else's ear over the same issue over and over and over again because you absolutely refuse to work and heal it? So if you know how awful it is when someone does it to you, think about how many times you've done that to someone else. And that is icky, right? So when you have that realization, that's what hopefully will trigger you wanting to work on that inner part of yourself and you wanting to heal. And it doesn't mean you need to go make a huge apology to other people. Do your work first before you go around making apologies. It's hilarious because I literally ended up finding a video where that exact thing happened. This person went on this huge apology tour. I just figured out, I did this, and they apologized to all these people. So everyone's excited, like, oh, great, they're finally going to work on this thing. And like 2 days later, they start doing the same behavior and worse to everyone else because they said, I'm sorry, but they never actually healed the issue. I'm sorry doesn't I don't wanna hear that coming out of anyone's mouth unless A, you really and truly mean it, and B, you've chosen to do the work so that it's not going to happen again. Otherwise, it's a false and empty promise. It's not necessarily false because I'm sure they mean it at the time, but it's an empty "I'm sorry" for the mere fact that they're just gonna go out and do it again like 15 minutes later, the minute that they get the chance. And when you haven't done the foundational work, when you haven't really gotten in touch with who you are, what makes you tick, the good sides of you and the negative sides of you, and we all have them, right? The negative sides you can look at, what do I need? What is it there for? And how can I potentially funnel this to make me a better person? Make me a better whatever the relationship title is in your life, right? Coworker, friend, partner, etc., family member. I have seen so many people say that they have imposter syndrome. And I'm not going to lie, the first time I heard this term, I was like, well, what are you talking about? Because obviously I deal with exorcisms and stuff. So I was like, ugh, this doesn't sound good. And then when I really read up on it, because it is a somewhat newer term, I started to realize, oh, that's curious. So here you've worked so hard in your life or your career or whatever in order to hit this job, career, achievement. And now that you've got it, you feel like you're an imposter because that fragile little ego that has not been healed or met or worked with is sitting over there and is freaking out because it put on this giant bravado that it was ready for, insert title, name, job, whatever there. And yet, in reality, it doesn't feel like it's capable. So the cool thing is that you ended up getting this promotion or job or opportunity because you were able to act your way in to landing this. But now that you're there, you don't feel like you deserve to be there, all because you haven't done the core work. Whereas if you had just started to do the core work, even if it's during the process that you're trying to achieve this goal or get whatever position or role it is, if you had done that work along the way, that sense of imposter syndrome would not be there. Instead, it would be, okay, I'm here, I got this promotion or I got this achievement, and I'm a little nervous, right? I might be in a little bit over my head, but I know I'm going to work super duper hard in order to earn my keep or in order to earn and stay at that position, status, achievement, whatever it is. I'm hoping that I'm making sense with all of this at this point. Another thing that I've seen is people who absolutely refuse to do this foundational work. They start charging at things in life and even with spirituality as if they have a right to know or to get. Again, with this feeling of instant gratification and this sense of entitlement. And then what ends up happening is they start challenging spirit or spirits to give them what is unearned. And when someone does that, okay, because you got to remember, something is always listening and spirit is always listening. So if you put that challenge out, I want XYZ gift or whatever right now, and you have not earned it, right? You have not done any of the work in order to earn that. Something is going to respond, and it's probably not going to be playing for the same team I am. It's not going to be kind, it's not going to be nice, and it's not going to be gentle. You might get what you want, but it's going to come with some consequences. Sometimes those consequences are you end up diverting and taking a very dark path. And I don't mean just energetically you get into dark stuff. I mean, like, your life becomes very sordid and very weird and very creepy. And you might go along with it because you think the reward is worth dealing with all the weirdness and icky, right? And I'm saying weird in a negative connotation, not my normal happy connotation of strange and weird. You might think it's worth it, but it doesn't lead to you truly being happy. It's the equivalent of holding up a liquor store because you want the money in the register. You didn't earn that. You're going to get the money, right? If you're holding them up and you have a weapon and you're demanding it, and the person's like, fine, just take it, right? Like, they don't pay me enough in order to fight over $200 in the register. So great, you walk away with $200 that you didn't earn. And then you end up getting found out by the police, and then you go to jail, right? Again, you got the money, but you didn't earn it, so it ends up taking you on a dark path. And just in general, I don't know how many times or why I have to say this as many times as I do not challenge spirit. Do not, okay? You are not that big, bad, and bold. Don't do it. Absolutely do not do it. If you think you want to do it, then you can go ahead and FAFO. Do what you want to do. But it is not advised. I have told this story before. There is a young man who wrote a book. I have searched everywhere for this book, by the way, and I'm not able to find it. But in this book, basically, he demanded from spirit that his third eye completely open, and he wanted to know all the things. And it did. Spirit opened it completely up for him. And after 2 days, he was begging for people to take him out. I think after 3 to 5 days, he ended up in an asylum, and he was institutionalized for a while, and he was begging spirit to take it back, and spirit left him with all of that for a while. It's very cool to think, oh, it would be nice if I felt everything, or if I knew what people were thinking, or if I had, whatever gift power you want to call it. But no one realizes that there's an entire foundational work that has to be done in order to properly initiate someone to be able to deal with those gifts and to be able to deal with all of that information and all of that so that they're able to even function. And I'm telling you, for me personally, and I'm not asking for a pity party whatsoever. I've been like this all my life. I really don't know any different. But every day isn't easy breezy and wonderful. I have days where I can barely get out of bed because I'm feeling everyone's everything. And it's not me. I don't understand what's going on. And I could try to block it out and do all of the things. And yes, I have many tools and many resources. But there are times when there's major stuff happening in the world where it's really, really hard to tune it out. And, I'll make jokes like, "Today is kind of a sucky day to be an empath," right? And anyone who is an empath or a true sensitive understands what that means because you all feel it too. I'm not the only one. The only reason I'm talking about this is because it's been brought up for me so many times recently in so many different situations that was Spirit's way of telling me, "Hey, I need you to talk about this." And so, for the few of you who listen to me, I really, really hope that this makes sense. And I hope that this will not only help you, but help anyone else in your life. If you want to send them this video and say, "Hey, listen to it," whether they have any clue who I am after, I don't care. You guys all know. I'm never going to ask you to like, I'm never going to ask you to subscribe. I you can send this out to 100 people and maybe one person will actually listen to it. And that's not because, they don't want to listen to things that you send. It's because that's how spirits set things up. The information that I have to give will get to who it needs to get to. I'm not trying to be famous. I'm not trying to be huge. And when I talk about all this ego work, I'm telling you that in order to do this work right here, these videos and all the things that I do as JJ Rose 777, I had a huge talk with my ego and luckily spirit intervening very, very early, as in this isn't about what I want. This is about what I'm called to do. So here it is, a Friday night. I could be out doing something super fun and awesome right now, and I canceled the plans because I needed to record this video. Right? So I needed to put this together, and I'm okay with that. That's 100%. This is my contribution back. But people don't always understand that sometimes when you have these gifts and you put your hand to the plow and you say, "Okay, spirit, like, I want to work for you. I want to give back. What do I need to do?" That comes with sacrifice. And time is the most precious resource we all have. So I'm going to leave you with a quote from a book called Power versus Force. And in the little bio, it says, "It demonstrates that with consciousness, intention, and discernment, anyone can find their truth and follow it towards a more fulfilled and impactful life." For those of you who have not read Journey of the Peaceful Warrior and Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, I highly recommend that you do. Those two books on their own will help reiterate in a beautifully, beautifully written allegory way for you what really I'm trying to talk about. And I know that if you're in my Discord, I've already put these books up and asked people to read them. But for those of you who aren't, I highly, highly, highly recommend Way of the Peaceful Warrior and Sacred Journey of the Peaceful Warrior. I will have them in the description of this video by Mr. Dan Millman. Incredible books. There is a movie for Way of the Peaceful Warrior that you can rent, I think, on YouTube. If you have premium, you get it free. I didn't. I had to rent it. I think it was $3.99. Completely worth it. I cried through the whole thing. It's a beautiful movie. The books are just as beautiful. He has a most excellent and beautiful way of describing the need for this process in a way that maybe is more eloquent and better suited for people than I'm able to convey. And as you all know, if someone else has already done it well, there's no need for me to do it over again. But I did feel very led and compelled to do this video in order to exert the importance of these works and also just to hopefully get across these points. I wish you all wonderful, wonderful, beautiful things and self-growth.